So my name is Casey Maddox. I'm with Alliance Defending Freedom and our Center for Academic Freedom, so that's why I am dressed like I am. I am a lawyer. I'm also an activist, and that's true basically of everybody at ADF. So our Center for Academic Freedom, as you heard from Tyson earlier, we basically sue universities, okay? That is our goal. Just the ones that need suing, that's most of them, but just the ones that need suing. So come talk to us at our booth. These t-shirts are free, okay? So the answer is more speech, and that's true on your campus. That's how you can actually get the message out about your pro-life message on your campus. The answer is more speech. And so I want to encourage you, stop by our booth and see us there. Also use the SFLA 2018 hashtag. It's not being used right now, at least on Twitter. I think half of the tweets using that hashtag are from me right now. So if we can boost that, that'd be great. And we're giving away things on that hashtag. So it's a good reason to actually get on there and check that out. So I am here to introduce the next panel in your breakout for this session. So first of all, Dr. Marguerite Duane is a board-certified family physician and co-founder and the executive director of FACTS. FACTS stands for the Fertility Appreciation Collaborative to Teach the Science. I love people who come up with great acronyms, and that's a good example. She also serves as an adjunct associate professor at Georgetown University, where she directs an introductory course on natural methods on family planning. And she's a co-founder of Modern Mobile Medicine, a direct primary care house calls-based practice serving patients in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. She's also a married mother of 4, so she knows what she's talking about. So this is Marguerite Duane. And then I also have the pleasure of introducing my good friend Sue Thayer. Sue Thayer is formerly my client, but you may know her because of the fact that she was a Planned Parenthood clinic director for 18 years in Storm Lake, Iowa. She saw what Planned Parenthood was trying to do in bringing webcam abortions, where remote doctors would talk to a woman on Skype and basically have them take the abortion pill in the office. And then she saw all kinds of problems. It was also flowing both from that and from other issues with Planned Parenthood, where they were causing waste, abuse, and potential fraud of taxpayer dollars of around $28 million. Okay, this is a substantial chunk of change. We went through this government shutdown right now, and you have Planned Parenthood out there spending that kind of money, defrauding taxpayers of that kind of money. Sue Thayer saw this up close and personal. She reached out to us. We have a lawsuit pending right now against Planned Parenthood. The end goal of that lawsuit is to require Planned Parenthood to pay back what it has taken from taxpayers. This is Sue Thayer. Outstanding, incredible, courageous person who stepped away from the abortion industry and, as a matter of fact, is now working with a crisis pregnancy center in the same town where she used to run a Planned Parenthood clinic. So Sue is just a wonderful human being. One of the great blessings of working at ADF and working in this movement is you get to represent people that are just some of the best people I know and better people than I will ever be. So thank you to both of them, and I will turn the microphone over now.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am so delighted to be here. What a great panel of speakers. I really feel very humbled and honored to be a part of the group of speakers to share with you today. I tend to be more of an optimist. I really like to focus on the positive. And I agree so much with what Abby said earlier, like we need to know our enemy, but we also need to know ourselves, and we need to know our own strengths. And so what I want to talk to you about today is the facts about fertility and about fertility awareness. If we can get this moving. So as the executive director of FACTS, the Fertility Appreciation Collaborative to Teach the Science, our mission is to educate healthcare professionals. So many physicians, midwives, physician's assistants, nurse practitioners do not truly understand the incredible power of the female cycle and of the fertility cycle. And the way we are trained in medical school and in nursing school and midwifery school is to treat the female fertility as a disease, right? And then, of course, we treat that end product of a woman's normally functioning reproductive system, the baby, as a disease. What I want to do is I want to share with you the facts about fertility and show you how this is normal and this is healthy. And your body is not broken. So this is my agenda. I'm going to talk about what are the greatest gifts you've been given. And then I'm going to tell you about the scientific basis, how we are designed, our bodies, how they're so beautifully designed. I want to then introduce you to what is fertility awareness. Awareness is about the knowledge, but how that leads to appreciation, a respect for the way your body is designed, your ability to create new human life. We're here all to fight for the life of the unborn, but what's so important for you to know how that life comes into existence. I'll talk about how your body is not broken despite the way our healthcare system approaches it, and then the slippery slope. I just recently read a book about World War II and about the horror of the Holocaust, and people wonder how could all the 6 million Jews end up in those concentration camps? It didn't start with putting them on trains to concentration camps. It started way back as they started down that slippery slope. And Planned Parenthood recognizes that, and that's how women go down that path. They don't grow up thinking, I want to have an abortion, but they find themselves with no other choice. So let's talk about the greatest gifts. We just, it's January, so Christmas just rolled around. I don't know about you, but I've got 4 kids, so Christmas is a favorite holiday at my house. And I ask you to think about what is the greatest gift that you have ever received in your life? What is the best thing that you've ever gotten? And anybody want to shout out, my sister at 19 got a car. I was like, that was a pretty awesome gift. Anybody else? What is a gift that you've gotten that's the best thing you've ever gotten? Coffee, yes, that's fantastic. What else? Your significant other, life, right? Your greatest gift is the gift of life. Where are these? Oh, there we go. That is the greatest gift that each one of us has been given. But how does that life come into existence? What is the second greatest gift that you've been given? And that's the gift of your fertility, your ability to create a new human life when you join with another person. We understand the value of the human life, but do you understand the value of your reproductive health system, your fertility, the way that it was designed? Many of you may not realize that, but if your fertility didn't function normally, you would not have the pleasure and the privilege of giving birth to a beautiful baby. That is my youngest, a mere hours old. Gianna Marie, of course, is now 3. But in order to understand the gift of life and the gift of fertility, you need to understand that life begins at conception, right? A new human being comes into existence the moment that sperm and egg unite in the fallopian tubes. That marks the beginning of a brand new human being. Your fertility, when it functions normal and is functioning normally, it's a healthy part of your reproductive system. That is the way your body is designed. But in order to develop a respect for your fertility, you need to understand it. And why is that important? Why is it important to recognize these gifts? Knowledge is power, okay? We know that an unborn baby's heart beats starting at 18 days. That's what allows us to say confidently, abortion stops a beating heart. But do you know that a woman is only fertile, only capable physiologically of getting pregnant for 3 to 6 days out of every cycle? Only about 70 to 80 days a year? And yet so many women are using hormonal contraception every single day of the year and exposing themselves to risk because they don't know. Because we've told women, if you look at a guy the wrong way, you might get pregnant. When the reality is that's not true. But you need this knowledge and you need to understand it so you can learn to better appreciate it. So next, let's talk about the way your body is designed. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail. If you are interested in learning more, FACS offers webinars specifically for this patient, for this population, called The Signs of the Female Cycle. And we're going to offer one on Tuesday. You can stop by our table to learn more about it. I'm just going to give you a very brief taste, though, so you have an understanding. What does it take to make a baby? It's not a trick question. You need 3 things to make a baby. Yes, that's right, I said 3 things. You need the sperm, which is the father's contribution. You need the egg, which is the mother's contribution. But you also need fertile cervical fluid, which is critical to the survival of the sperm to allow for conception to occur. When all of those 3 things are in place, you can potentially get the formation of a new human life. And that gets me to my next point. It takes 2 people to make a baby. Why is it that abortion is a women's issue? Why is it that family planning and birth control is a women's issue? We do not procreate on our own, and I'm so excited to see so many men here today. Men, in reality, are always fertile. From the time you go through puberty until the time you die, unless you're dealing with a medical illness, you're always fertile. But as I said, women are almost always infertile. But together, a couple can learn that fertile window and identify when that possibility of getting pregnant can occur. And what determines that fertile window? It's this incredible orchestration of hormones in the female body. All of these hormones have to be working, perfectly in line with one another to allow the female cycle to generate that cervical fluid, to produce that egg, to allow for conception to occur, to continue to provide the hormonal support to allow that baby to continue to grow and develop over the next 9 months. Anything that interferes with that can potentially interfere with that human life. And when everything is working beautifully, and I promise this is the only anatomy picture up here, but I include it because this is my daughter's favorite side. Whenever I give my presentations, she's 9 now, but she's been watching this slide since she was 4. So she can tell you all about cervical fluid and sperm, and it's amazing. But when everything works perfectly and the cervical fluid is there and the sperm can survive and they travel to the fallopian tube, that is where conception can occur. And you get the formation of that genetically unique human being, which at that moment of conception, their gender is determined, their eye color is determined, their DNA, what makes them who they are, is in place. And over the next 9 months, that little human embryo will continue to grow and develop, and at the end, you will get a healthy baby. Wow, this animation is really thrown off on this slide. But I want you to know that, and I want to point out a very important thing. Conception occurs in the distal fallopian tube. It takes 7 to 10 days for that newly formed human embryo to travel the distance of the fallopian tube and implant into the lining of the uterus. Why is that important? ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, which my colleague, Dr. Donna Harrison, who works with APLOG, they have a booth next to ours, the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. She calls ACOG the Abortion College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. In 1965, they redefined pregnancy as beginning at implantation, after the human embryo is implanted into the uterine lining, at 7 to 10 days post-conception. Why did they do that? Well, because then they can talk about birth control doesn't interrupt a pregnancy. Well, it may not interrupt a pregnancy, but it certainly does interrupt a human life. And we don't know this. I mean, I didn't know this as a doctor when I first went through my training, right? And it's important for you to understand that. I said I wasn't going to show you any more anatomy. This is the physiology. For those of you in biology, I'm not going to go through this, but it's really to show you the amazing intricacy of the human body and about the female human body. And when everything is working perfectly, how this leads to your healthy fertility. And how there are so many things that our society does to reject this, to say this is not normal. This is normal. And if you want to learn more, we want to teach you more because we want you to develop this appreciation. And to learn more about any of these, the best thing is to learn to chart your cycle with a fertility awareness-based method. We talk about the female cycle as the 5th vital sign. For a while in medicine, they kept talking about pain as the 5th vital sign. I don't know about any of you, but I don't need pain to survive, right? But we as a human species need normal, healthy fertility to survive as a species. Just like you need your heart to beat, you need to be able to breathe, you need to have a normal temperature. These are vital signs. Your fertility is a vital sign. And you can learn about your fertility through fertility awareness-based methods, whether they're cervical fluid methods, symptothermal, symptohormonal such as Marquette, or even standard days methods. Now again, I personally never heard the term fertility awareness or natural family planning until I was 29 years old. I already had an MD after my name. I was in my residency when I heard this term for the first time. And as a physician and as a woman, I was shocked and then angry. This is knowledge that every woman and man need to understand and need to know from a young age. And it's not hard to learn to chart your fertility. Get this, this is too complicated. I worked at Catholic Charities Health Centers here in DC. We served an exclusively poor, uninsured population, minority population. well, they can't possibly learn to manage their fertility. This is too complicated for them. I'm like, this is not hard, and this does not take a lot of time. But what it does take is it takes people to be willing to teach them and to explain to them, and it only takes them a few minutes a day to chart. And you can chart whether you're doing it just to understand your body from a women's health perspective, whether you're single, whether you're poor, whether you live in a rural area, whether you're married, whether you're a couple seeking to have a baby. So these methods can work for anyone and everyone. How many of you have ever heard of Planned Parenthood teaching about fertility awareness-based methods? No. And in fact, Cecile Richards recently was tweeting about, oh my goodness, the Trump administration wants to fund Rhythm. Well, newsflash, Cecile, the Rhythm method was developed in the 1920s, before the first antibiotic. So if you want to talk about keeping up with the science, stay up to date on modern fertility awareness-based methods that are not your grandmother's Rhythm method. Okay, these are methods that involve charting very observable signs that women can learn to chart. And you can use this not only from a family planning perspective, you can use this to simply monitor your health. How many women like to be surprised by their monthly visitor? Travel to DC for the March for Life and, oh shoot, I wasn't expecting to get my period that weekend. Well, when you chart, you don't have to be surprised because you can understand it. Or maybe you deal with irregular cycles or painful periods or PMS symptoms. Using fertility awareness-based methods, we can actually use this information to target potential hormonal abnormalities and treat this. How does our medical society tell you to treat it? Take the pill. Take the pill. The pill will cure your acne, it will cure your painful periods, it will cure your regular cycles, it will cure. The pill doesn't cure any of that. What the pill does is it shuts down the female reproductive system, okay? We spend a lot of time telling boys, don't take anabolic steroids, they're dangerous, steroids are dangerous. This is what we tell our boys. And then we tell our girls, here, take this pill full of steroids, and this is good for you, and this is a vitamin. It is not. It is harmful. Fertility awareness-based methods, though, allow us to address women's health issues. From, again, everything from irregular cycles and polycystic ovarian syndrome to painful periods, even to infertility. And I want you to remember that because infertility is a really important topic as well. You can use it for family planning. You can chart on paper. You can chart with an app. That being said, if you are using an app to chart with a method to prevent pregnancy, there are almost 100 apps on the market. Facts actually did a review of all of them that were on the market as of 2015. Of the 100 on the market, there were about 10 that we could recommend. So, buyer beware when it comes to the app. And I also tell my patients, women are smart. You're smarter than your smartphone. If you've taken a class and learned how to chart your cycle and you know when you're fertile, don't rely on your app to tell you. Rely on your knowledge. And if you're not sure, go back to your trained educator. Fertility awareness-based methods are effective. These are effective forms of family planning. These are the typical and correct use effectiveness rates for the most common: Billings, Creighton, symptothermal, symptohormonal. Now, what's the difference between correct and typical? How many of you have been given an antibiotic and told, take that antibiotic 3 times a day for 10 days, and you took that antibiotic exactly as directed 3 times a day for 10 days? Any hands? Maybe a few. How many of you you forgot one, you took one too late, you took 2 at night, you took it like most people, because we're human, right? We make mistakes. So the effectiveness rate showed correct use versus typical use. But the important thing to note is even with typical use, if you look at natural methods versus artificial methods, like the birth control pill, natural methods are comparable to the artificial methods. Now, you won't get that information from your doctor because your doctor, most doctors, I don't want to malign all of my colleagues, but many physicians are not familiar with modern methods. In fact, there was a study that showed only 3 to 6% of physicians are knowledgeable about modern fertility awareness-based methods. Less than 10%. And this was a study of family physicians and obstetrician gynecologists. So if they don't know about it. But the issue is that these methods are comparable to artificial methods. But physicians are not familiar with it, and so women are not being told about it. And physicians, if they think they know about fertility awareness-based methods, they're going to tell you these methods fail 25% of the time. Now, clearly nowhere up there does it say a 25% failure rate. 10%, 4%, 2%, and let me just say, it's not a failure rate because if a method fails and you get pregnant, a baby is not a failure, okay? It may be an unintended pregnancy, and that's the language we like to use, but again, I mean, unfortunately, I live in this society with this contraceptive mentality that a pregnancy is a failure, so forgive me if I fall back into that language. But with the unintended pregnancy rates, as you see, that I quoted, is about anywhere from 2 to 10%. The CDC quotes a 25% unintended pregnancy rate. It's very inaccurate. We actually have a petition on the FACTS website asking the CDC to update their data based on the best evidence. Let me say this, your body is not broken. Despite what our society says that you have to take birth control because of X, Y, and Z condition, if your body is not working, you have irregular cycles, there may be an issue, you need to figure that out. Fertility awareness-based methods offer a healthy alternative than traditional forms of birth control. And let's talk about birth control and how this works. Again, you know, I always knew that abortion was wrong. I always knew that abortion ended a human life. What I didn't know is that there are many forms of birth control that can cause the early loss of a human embryo, either primarily by preventing implantation. So let's look at how these methods work, okay? The birth control pill or any hormonal contraceptive, whether it's the pill, the patch, can work in 4 ways. 1, it inhibits ovulation. It prevents the egg from being released. 2, it thickens the cervical mucus to try to block the sperm, and if that doesn't work, it tries to slow transport of the sperm to prevent it from reaching the egg in time. And if that doesn't work, and a human embryo is formed, it can actually prevent implantation at about 7 to 10 days after fertilization. Now, this may be news to some of you. This may be shocking to some of you. Some of you may be using birth control and be like, well, what do I do now? Okay, and I don't say this to shock you, but I say this to inform you. I understand that feeling of shock. That's what I experienced as a resident. I want you to learn about this sooner. The IUD, which is now, as physicians, we are being trained to offer IUDs to teenagers, 13, 14, 15 years old, okay? This is a metal or plastic device that's inserted into the woman's uterus that has a range of side effects and also primarily works either by blocking sperm penetration or preventing implantation. These are only a list of some of the side effects, but it can be very serious. The adverse effects of the pill. Again, I don't show this to scare you, and certainly not every woman is going to experience every one of these side effects, but every one of these side effects have been reported in the medical literature. And it's important to know that 2/3 of women will stop using birth control within the first year because of side effects. And not just minor side effects, but serious ones. Blood clot, stroke. The birth control pill, the combination hormonal birth control, is actually classified by the World Health Organization as a Group 1 carcinogen, because of the increased risk of breast cancer and cervical cancer and liver cancer. A Group 1 carcinogen. Can anybody else name a Group 1 carcinogen? Asbestos. Tobacco, right? We have all these warnings on cigarettes because it's a cancer-causing agent. How many women know that the pill that they take is a cancer-causing agent? Now, what my colleagues will say, well, it reduces their risk of endometrial and ovarian cancer, which may be true, but the incidence of those cancers are so much less. We see the Susan G. Komen walk for breast cancer. Can anybody name the endometrial cancer walk? The ovarian cancer walk? No, because the incidence of those cancers is so much lower. Plus, there are other ways to reduce your risk of endometrial and ovarian cancer, such as pregnancy and breastfeeding. And the important thing to note is that the birth control pill, it's not only minor side effects or serious side effects, even Cosmo acknowledges that women can die from the birth control pill. And these are just some of the women whose families I've met who have buried their daughters because of side effects from hormonal contraception. I believe if we are pro-life, it's not just being pro-life for the babies, it's being pro-life for the women too, right? And now the percentage of the incidence may be very, very low. It may be less than 1%, which was what my colleagues say, but it's only 0.2% of women might experience death. Well, if you have 10 million women that are on the birth control pill, what's 0.2%? You're still talking hundreds of women, somebody's sister, daughter, mother. I'm gonna end with here, the slippery slope. And this talk was supposed to be about how Planned Parenthood betrays women. Where does the slippery slope start? Remember I said I read this book about World War II just recently, and it was about these 2 French women whose town was taken over by the Germans. And the German soldier was staying at this woman's house and said, just give me the names of all the people in your town who are communists and Jewish. And she's like, well, why do I need to do that? Well, us Germans, we like to make lists and we just want to stay organized. And she didn't want to do it. And he's like, well, I'm gonna get it, whether you help me or not. And she's like, okay, I want to be helpful. I don't want to upset this soldier that's living in my house. And she wrote down the list of names. And he said, aren't you missing somebody? And she knew he was referring to her best friend who was a Jewish woman. And he's like, put down your neighbor's name. And she put it down. And she didn't want to. This was her best friend. The story proceeds where she actually takes her best friend's child, clutching him as she is being herded on to the train to go off to the concentration camps. When she wrote her friend's name down, that's not what she saw, but it's the start of the slippery slope. How does Planned Parenthood, how does our society start the slippery slope? We put women on the pill. We're just going to regulate your cycle. If you're between the ages of 11 and 14, 15, you've just started menstruating within the last 2 years, it is normal for your cycle to vary from 21 to 45 days. If you don't get your period except for every other month, that may be normal. Putting you on the pill, in my opinion, at that time is medical malpractice because you're not allowing her pituitary axis to mature normally. You're actually interrupting it. Then you might take it for acne, or you might, like me, I took the pill in college for my painful periods because that was what was offered to me. And then when you're on the pill, well, you might get pressure from your partner. Well, you're protected, right? How many of you know that more than half of all abortions are done on women who are using birth control at the time they get pregnant? Planned Parenthood knows that, right? We talk about Planned Parenthood as all about abortion. If you really believe that Planned Parenthood wants to do more abortions, why do you think they would make sure women are protected by putting more and more women on birth control? Because they know the truth. They know it doesn't ultimately protect them because you're going to have more women engaging in sexual relations who might not have otherwise because they feel like they're safe. They feel protected. So when birth control doesn't work, which it won't, it leads to abortion. Now, I know every single one of you in this room, if you were faced with an unplanned pregnancy, the likelihood of you pursuing abortion would be exceedingly low. I mean, the pressure might still be there, but you have the strength and the fortitude to resist it. But the other thing I want to just point out here is the birth control pill or hormonal contraception, if you're taking it for 10, 15, 20 years, it can negatively affect your entire reproductive health system. Our society wants to tell us your fertility is an on-off switch. I'm going to college, I'm going to medical school, I'm going to be a doctor, I can't get pregnant, I'm going to turn off my fertility. And then when I'm 35, I'm going to turn it back on. It doesn't work that way, okay? The birth control pill can actually age the cervix and make it much more difficult for you to get pregnant. Well, that's okay. Our society has an answer to that, right? We call this artificial reproductive technology, IVF, okay? Do you know how many human lives, human embryos are being lost in IVF centers? Many of you, I'm sure, would never pursue abortion, but you might fall into the trap. Fall down that slippery slope that could lead to artificial insemination and artificial reproductive technologies that, unbeknownst to you, because you feel like you have no other option, could potentially lead to the loss of human life. And the important thing to know is that fertility awareness-based methods offer another option. I have a 4-year-old goddaughter who's here today. I have a sister who struggled mightily with infertility, but through fertility awareness-based methods and now for technology, the doctors were able to fix what was leading to her infertility, and she had a baby normally and naturally. And hers is not the only story. There's actually published medical studies available on our website. And with that, I'm just going to end with, if you're interested in learning more about the details about fertility, join us for our webinar, stop by our booth, visit our website, and please let me know if you have any other questions. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Sue.
I think those are all your slides, are they? Is that it? Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Well, I'm excited to be here. My name is Sue. You heard about me from Casey. How many were all at the March for Life yesterday? Did everybody go? Yeah! I've been here before for the March for Life. Was anybody here 2 years ago during the blizzard? Yeah, that was fun. About, I think 4 or 5 years ago, it snowed like the whole time, and we were encrusted in snow. I was here with my family, but we're from Northwest Iowa, so when we come to DC in January, it's like a heat wave here. So it didn't bother us a bit. So we heard from Abby this morning how important it is to know your enemy, right? Know who you're battling. And in this case, we're battling those who support abortion, those who want to kill babies. So we're going to talk about that today. I worked in the abortion industry for all those years and going to share some of the stuff that I saw while I was working there. Certainly we heard a lot of great stuff from Dr. Duane just now. But when does life begin? Sometimes people will tell you, well, it doesn't really start until fill in the blank, the baby takes the first breath until it's viable. 20, 24, 28 weeks, whatever, or after the first trimester. Those are all things that people have said to me. But really, we know, scientifically speaking, that when the sperm and the egg meet, there's life. Because the very definition of life, is it growing? Is it changing? And of course, that little tiny sperm meets that egg, and it divides, and it's 2 cells, and then it's 4, and then it's 8, and then it's 16, and it's growing and changing just like we are right now. So life begins at conception, and that's scientifically proven. So even if you encounter someone who is not a Christian, they don't want to hear about religion or whatever it is, it's a scientific fact. Some of the milestones, of course, of a baby, it's fantastic what you can see. I think it was Bernard Nathanson, an early abortion doctor, that said, if women's wombs had windows, there would be no more abortions. Because if you could see the miracle of life, no one would choose abortion. Well, we can see now because we have 4D ultrasound. You can see a tiny little baby sucking its thumb. And I mean, I've seen ultrasounds where a little tiny hand is up and a finger does this, you know, while you're watching. And what a miracle of life that is. So we know that it's alive. Few little things about Planned Parenthood. They just put out their most recent annual report. They get a lot of money from taxpayers like us. We pay them to kill 321,000 babies. Does that make sense? I mean, it defies logic. They have a lot of assets. They claim that they do adoption referrals, but an adoption referral at Planned Parenthood is when a woman says, sure, I'll take information on adoption. So the staff gives her a brochure, that's an adoption referral. In all my years there and all the clinics in Iowa, we never had one person, not one, that chose adoption. And we did thousands and thousands of abortions. They also claim that 3% of their services are abortion-related, 97% are not. But they kind of use this creative financing. They'll count a woman that comes into the clinic 10 times in a year as 10 patients. And then the woman that comes in just once and gets an abortion, she's 1. So that right there shows you that out of those 2 patients, 10% was abortion-related, when really it was 50%, because out of 2 women, 1 got an abortion. So they have kind of a unique way of saying that. Margaret Sanger, have you all heard of Margaret Sanger? She is the founder of Planned Parenthood. She was into eugenics. She was a woman that believed the best thing that we could do for a large family is to kill their children. She didn't like any minorities. That is the very foundation of Planned Parenthood. They put their clinics, their facilities, in neighborhoods where there's a high minority population and a large number of poverty, a lot of poverty. So a little bit about their birth control pills. We heard Dr. Duane talk about that. Planned Parenthood Federation of America does a contract every year or 2 with the big drug companies, usually Ortho, and they contract to buy pills at a tiny amount. So the last time I was there, I worked there until December of 2008, they were paying $2.98 a cycle for pills. Then they turn around and sell those for $35. That's a pretty big markup. They bill Medicaid. Medicaid pays that bill, and then they require every patient to donate, they call it a donation, $10 a cycle, or 50% of what your services were. So you can see that that ends up being a really big moneymaker for Planned Parenthood. They also love to tell women, you know what? You don't have to have a period at all. You just keep taking those pills. And you know, there's 21 pills in there that are called active pills, and then there's 7 pills that are inactive, and that's where a woman would normally get her period. They say, you know, just skip those inactive pills, and you won't have to have a period at all. And of course, what does that mean for Planned Parenthood? They're selling more pills, okay? So we would have clients that would maybe have a period once a year, if that, and that's not good for your body. That's not good at all. Informed consent at Planned Parenthood. There should be a doctor that sits down with a client and explains medication, new medication. But at Planned Parenthood, it's pretty much written out on a paper, and everybody's in a hurry. There's quotas that you have to meet and so many patients to see. You slide that paper across the desk and say, sign here, put it in the chart. That's informed consent. Very short, very brief. The stuff that Dr. Duane just shared about so much of what birth control pills do, they never mention that at all. Honestly, a lot of that stuff, I didn't even know. And I would hear people say to me, like we'd have protesters outside and they would say, you know, those birth control pills, they cause abortions. I was like, oh, you're so mixed up. You don't know. And then when I got out of there and actually took the time to sit down and study a little bit about birth control pills, I realized that in all those years and all those thousands and thousands of cycles of birth control pills I handed out, who knows how many women actually had that little tiny baby in there, but it never implanted, it was washed out because they were on the birth control pill. It's a bad thing. Of course, Planned Parenthood also has goals for abortions. Every facility, every abortion facility has to hit a certain number of abortions. If you don't, you have to have a corrective action plan saying why you didn't hit it this month and what you're going to do differently for next month. And that was the point. I remember sitting in a manager's meeting, and they were like telling us that, you know, we had these goals, because that wasn't that way when I first started working there. I thought, we're going to have goals for numbers of abortions, like killing babies? So even then, even though I worked there, like I knew God, I guess, put it in my heart that, you know, that is really wrong. And that was one of the big things that started me thinking about, should I really be working here or not? And then the next thing that happened was something called Webcam abortion. I don't know, there's surgical abortion. Have you heard of chemical abortion or medication abortion? It's pills that a woman can take instead of having surgery. It kills the fetus, kills the baby right away. Then she takes pills a couple days later, and that starts the contractions. Those are bad enough, but Planned Parenthood had this brilliant idea to start doing something called Webcam abortion. So it's a chemical or medication abortion done by non-medical people like me. I was the center manager, and my staff under me, who were clinic assistants, doing these abortions. So long story short, the woman sees the physician via a Skype-like connection. And the invasive procedure, which is a transvaginal ultrasound to see that little tiny baby, is done by the non-medical staff. So I'm in rural Iowa, supposed to be doing transvaginal ultrasounds. The image is scanned to the doctor in Des Moines. She can push a button on her computer screen that pops open this drawer, which is preloaded with the abortion-inducing drugs. So when they started that, in my personal life, God had kind of been working on my heart, and I was starting to think, you know, I don't know if I should really be here. And all these things were happening. When they announced that they were going to be doing webcam abortions, I was just like, I cannot do those. So ultimately, I was telling my boss, no, I can't do this. What are the qualifications to do a vaginal ultrasound? And my boss said to me, Sue, if you are breathing, you can do it. It's not a big deal. It's a lot like running a video game, the joystick on the video game. And I'm thinking, no, it isn't, because it's inserting something into a woman without any training. So I told him I wouldn't do it, and I did ultimately end up getting fired, which was a good thing. You know, God has taken care of me since, but it was scary at the time to get fired from the job that I'd been at for so many years. But they did start doing webcam abortions a couple weeks after they fired me, and they still do them in Iowa today. But they charge the same for them as a surgical abortion. There's no follow-up care. They're welcome to come back to the facility, but if they have any bleeding, any problems, it's pretty much an emergency room trip. They'll tell you it's safer, it's easier, it's less invasive. They stood before the Iowa Board of Medicine in Des Moines, Iowa, and said, we've never had a complication or a complaint. When I worked there, we had women that would have these webcam abortions, take these abortion-inducing drugs, realize, you know, at 70 days, that's 10 weeks past conception, this little tiny baby they would see, a little tiny fetus, put them in a Ziploc bag and bring them back in and say, you did not tell me that it was a baby. So I said, is that considered a complication? They're not safe. And certainly the people doing them are not qualified to do that. They do webcam abortion way past the cutoff date. When they started doing them in Iowa, the FDA had approved those drugs for use to day 49. Right away, they started doing them through day 63, and now they do them through day 70. They changed up the medication to make it cheaper. They skip a visit. Of course, they always call any baby. It's just products of conception. Contents of uterus, a heavy period, it's not a big deal. You'll see some tissue. They never say the word baby, ever, ever. So, and when you have an ultrasound, when a pregnant woman has an ultrasound at Planned Parenthood, the screen is turned away because they don't want her to see the image of that baby on the screen. Because a large majority, some say up to 90% of women who see their baby's heartbeat on the screen and are thinking about abortion will change their mind and choose life. So Planned Parenthood isn't going to sell abortions if mom sees that heartbeat. So we have tried in Iowa many different ways to get rid of webcam abortion and have failed, unfortunately. But we are not done yet, and we have confidence that it will end in Iowa, which is the state where it began. But when you have pro-abortion people in high places like the Supreme Court, going is tough. But when I look out here and see all you young people, some of you are going to go into law school, right? Who's thinking about law school? Okay, good. And you are going to become Supreme Court judges, right? And maybe you'll even be on the U.S. Supreme Court, right? And then we'll have better going. There's also something called teleabortion. This is new. It's in 4 states. They're up there. But now, instead of having to go into an abortion facility and see a doctor via Skype, you just get on your phone. You download an app. You talk to them over your phone, and you have to have some blood work done, any place you want to go, and then they'll overnight the pills to you. Bad medicine. There's the number of abortions. If you've never gone to the website, numberofabortions.com, you can watch it go up. I did this on Monday. I guarantee if you log on there right now, it will be higher. We heard a little bit about David Daleiden this morning and his Undercover videos, but I wanted to share just a couple things about that. How many have watched the videos? Okay, you need to all watch them. Probably need to get a box of Kleenex because they're pretty hard to watch. They're hard for me to watch. But the women and the men in these videos are top-level physicians. These aren't people that work in abortion clinics. They are the ones that train the doctors who do the abortions, okay? This is Dr. Mary Gatter. This is over lunch. She was videotaped saying, you tell me how much you want to pay for the baby parts because I want a Lamborghini. And she wasn't kidding. I mean, this lady wants a Lamborghini. So she wants to sell the parts of the babies that Planned Parenthood aborts for the highest dollar, like an auction. This one is Debbie Nucatola. She's sitting there over an expensive salad saying, yeah, people want lower extremities, legs. I mean, that's real easy because the legs are right there. She's the one who said, we crush above the thorax and below the thorax. So the heart, lungs, liver, thymus is intact because we get more money for intact specimens. They are talking about the heart of a baby. And I'm sorry to be graphic. It is impossible to talk about the murder of 60 million babies without being a little bit graphic. So I apologize for that, but this is the face of the abortion industry. There's a quote from a Planned Parenthood director. That's the kind of stuff that happens in there. These two are haggling over, well, maybe we should sell them per item because I think we'll get a little bit more. That's what goes on in there, and I've seen it. So, just to wrap up, and then we're going to have time for some questions for either one of us, but you guys are awesome. I feel like the pro-life movement is in great hands. There's so many of you, and I think about each one of you going back to your school, your campus, your dorm, wherever, in your circle of influence. And with social media, things fly, and it's so easy to share. But you know, you need to, like Abby said this morning, and we've heard many times, you need to be comfortable talking about life. And if somebody comes up to you and says, you know, where would those 60 million babies be? If they hadn't been aborted, where would they be? Or abortion is so green. Those are things I hear all the time. You know, we have too many people. And who are you to tell me what to do with my body? All of those are things that you're going to hear. You know, when you fly home or when you go on the bus or you're out driving around, wear a pro-life t-shirt. I've got one that says, it's a Ronald Reagan quote, and he says, I've noticed everyone who's for abortion has already been born. You know? And that says a lot. And I have people come up to me all the time, good or bad. But changing hearts one at a time is what happens in conversation. And even if you part and you haven't agreed, if you're smiling and you show that you're willing to dialogue about it, you have made a difference. So that's what we're all called to do. So we have just a few minutes left, and Dr. Duane and I are more than happy to take any kind of questions. We got one over here. I was a sexuality educator for Planned Parenthood for all those years, so there is no question that I haven't heard. Plus, Dr. Duane probably can answer the medical parts.
So, testing. Ah, there we go. Okay. So my question is in reference to Plan B. How does it actually work, and is it a part of rape kits? Like if I were raped and I went to the hospital, would they immediately give me Plan B without informing me? And how does it actually work, like the anatomy of it?
Plan B, I'll give this one to Dr. Duane, but Plan B is something that's largely touted at Planned Parenthood, given up to 5 days after unprotected intercourse to help cause an abortion, basically. And we used to have free giveaways where we would go to the high school and hand that out because we wanted it in everybody's hands.
Yeah, I mean, Sue's correct. Plan B is a high dose of hormones, and the way it works actually depends on when the woman takes it during her cycle. So if she takes it before she's ovulated, it could delay ovulation. If she takes it after ovulation, because it's such a high dose of progesterone, it could actually lead to implantation. So it depends on when she takes it. And it could also lead to prevention of implantation. So it depends on where she is when she takes it. There's a really good article by a colleague of mine, Dr. Rebecca Peck, in the Linacre Quarterly that goes into detail about how Plan B works. And if you want to stop by our table and write your name down, I can make sure to forward the article to you that describes it in detail. But it depends on where she is in her cycle. And if you remember that last slide that we went through, like that was my cuts, that actually showed how Plan B worked.
I just had a quick question about the three different methods you mentioned, the natural family planning and the FEM. Which ones do you recommend? Like, do you recommend a combination of all of them? I know that some of them, like, they don't, like, work in the same thing. They're three different sort of iterations of sort of planning naturally.
So which method do I recommend of the fertility awareness-based methods? So I tell people the best method is the one that's going to work best for you, and that's going to vary. So the Billings method is probably the most simple and straightforward. It's the easiest to learn, but it only requires observing cervical fluid. If you've got really clear cervical fluid observations, it might be really good. Symptothermal is nice because it gives you a double check. You can actually see the rise in your temperature, which for some people, like, they need to, like, cross their T's and dot their I's and make sure that everything looks good. But for that, you have to be able to take your temperature at the same time every morning, which I was never good at. There's Marquette, which also offers a double check. There's Creighton, which is much more detailed observations of cervical fluid. And Creighton has developed a whole medical applications part of it. So I would say that any of the methods that have good evidence to support their use, you should consider. But the most important thing to using a method effectively is learn from a trained educator. Okay, do not try to learn how to use a method from an app or from a book, or from what your best friend tells you. Find a teacher who can teach you how to use the method. This requires behavior change. So it's like, again, we have the new year. Some of you probably committed to, like, I'm going to get into an exercise routine. If you try and go out and do it on your own, it's not going to work as effectively as if you work with a personal trainer that can show you how to use the equipment, or you have your best friend that's going to go to the gym with you. So learn from an educator, be motivated to use it, and have a partner that's going to be supportive of your use of it if you're using it from a family planning perspective. Does that make sense? Other questions? There's some.
Okay. I have a friend who had a baby this year, and she's my age, and she said that she was against abortion and, like, taking the birth control, like, the pill, because she had heard, like, of the negative side effects of that. But then she went out and, like, a week or two ago got the IUD, and I don't know if I missed it on the slide, but she claims that, like, she wasn't told, or she's not, like, there's no, like, negative side effects to that. And so I was just wondering, like, what you suggest I would say to, or like what they would be.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the fertility awareness world where I work, there's a lot of people that are very pro-fertility awareness, that are very anti-birth control, but that are very pro-abortion, which is just mind-boggling to me, how they do that mental gymnastics. And a number of them are still very pro-IUD, specifically the non-hormonal IUDs, right? Because the key with the non-hormonal IUDs is that it can still allow ovulation to occur. And ovulation is the actual sign of health. But the way the non-hormonal IUD is, it basically creates an immune reaction. Again, you are putting a foreign body inside your uterus. Have any of you gotten a splinter, you know, and you see, like, the skin around gets really red and inflamed? That's your body attacking it. It's a foreign body. When you put that IUD inside, you're creating an immune response to create an inflammatory environment inside the uterus that is partially designed to attack the sperm, but it also creates a lining that's not hospitable for implantation. So an IUD can absolutely cause the loss of an early human embryo by preventing implantation. The other thing that's not really well studied is many of the non-hormonal IUDs or copper IUDs, they're releasing copper ions. I mean, you're releasing metal ions into your body. And how is that going to affect your overall health? So I'm not surprised that your friend was told, oh, there's no side effects, because it's not going to have the same side effects as hormonal methods of family planning will, but there are absolutely side effects. And again, as physicians, we're not necessarily well versed in these side effects, and or we don't have the time to talk about them, and or we're discouraged from talking about them because we don't want to discourage women's use of these methods. But I would tell your friend, no, they certainly do have side effects, and she really should look into that in more detail. And probably the most concerning side effect for you, and perhaps your friend, you know, if she's against abortion, is the fact that this could actually cause the loss of an early human life.
Okay, and then this is our final question.
Yes, so for those of us who spend time actually not protesting, but rather seeking to offer counsel and help to women at abortion clinics, You're experiencing having worked there for years. Anyone that's been out there long knows that you have very little time and you have very little trust from the ladies. It doesn't matter what you look like, man, woman, doesn't matter your ethnicity. So what are some strategies, what are some ways that we can be the most effective with that short amount of time that we have?
Well, probably the best thing I could tell you about that is to go see Sidewalk Advocates for Life. I think they have a booth here, but they are people that specialize in being on the sidewalk in front of an abortion facility. I can really tell you best what doesn't work, because from working inside Planned Parenthood, we would have people come and be angry and yelling and calling us murderers and saying bad things, and that made me flee. And it made the clients coming in to get an abortion think, those pro-life people are crazy. So I would say that's the one thing you don't want to do. I have a couple slides that I share sometime, but there's a man outside of an abortion facility saying, I have 20 families that will adopt your baby today. And he doesn't say anything to him, but he's holding this big high sign and he just stands there. And so they're thinking about that as they go in. And another one is, it's a guy holding a sign, and I think he's got a rosary, and it says, look at the ultrasound. You know, because like I told you, Planned Parenthood turns the ultrasound away. But if women have that in their head, maybe I should ask to see the ultrasound. That's probably the best thing. But, you know, workers that have come out will tell you that be nice, be kind, and I think women going in would say the same thing, that they don't pay attention if somebody's angry and yelling or they look scary, but if you're standing there and they know you're praying and you mean well and we can help you, you know, those kinds of things are what touch their hearts.